What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by two of the greats in this industry, unrecognized talent, as always, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Doing good, Chris. Doing good. Another week, another recording day, another podcast to record, another beautiful session to get to talk sports with the boys. Life is just going good right now. I can't complain.
I'm doing good, mostly because fantasy season is almost here, and that's the best time of the year. Other than that, everything's still the same.
All right, best time of the year. It's debatable, but
No, it's like the best. Draft week is the best week of the year.
I wouldn't. No, I debate that. So it's better than Christmas.
Yes, that's the 1 day thing. It's not a week.
Did you just say draft week though?
Huh?
Didn't you just say draft week?
Yeah. I have a draft almost every day that week.
Okay, so I'm not spending any more time on this bullshit. Here we go. Moving on. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be concluding our NFL division series today where we talk about NFL divisions, teams in those divisions, and our expectations for each team, what we think is going to happen, predictions, dark horses, surprises, the order of how those divisions will go by. So we're going to predict who's going to end up last. We're going to predict who's going to end up third, second, and first. Yeah, that's our division series. We have done the East, the North, and the South, and we're going to conclude with the AFC and NFC West this week, which is arguably, in both conferences, the best division in football. So yeah, that's our division series. Not a lot of news in the other sports. Basketball's dry as hell. There was some news in NHL world, but it was Jurg wants to wait until there's more news so we could just make a big conglomerate news discussion for NHL. Yeah, so this is gonna be a NFL dominated episode. So yeah. Yeah, fellas, are we ready to go?
Yeah, are you?
I think so.
Yes, and I say we start off with the NFC West and then we'll end with the AFC West because everyone knows that's the death division.
Yep.
So let's start off with the NFC West. Now, if this is your first time listening, the way we go in order is basically how we predict the division will go. So if we say the team we say first, the team we discuss first is the team that we predict will be last in the division, and then the next team we think will be third, and then vice versa. And then of course the last team we discuss will be the team that we think will be first place in the division. Unless there's some disagreements, I don't think there will be. Maybe the AFC West will cause some discussion, but we'll see how that goes. Okay. NFC West, fellas, I think this is easy to start off with. Seattle Seahawks, last place. I think we're all in consensus for that one.
Yep.
They're in rebuild mode, even though they don't want to necessarily, I guess, admit it, but like they lost Russell Wilson. Their starting quarterback will be Drew Lock or Geno Smith. They re-signed DK Metcalf recently. I think it was like 3 years. They drafted Charles Cross, so they finally beef up their O-line a bit because, man, Russell Wilson was near death every possession, but he's that good that he made it work. But yeah, this team's in a rebuild, obviously. They do have some nice offensive pieces here, but when your quarterback is Drew Lock and or Geno Smith, shit will not get done. And in this division especially, they're going to be last. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, but I don't think they're going to reach the Bears echelon. I think they'll be a top 10 pick next year, maybe. Am I wrong for that?
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Wait, the Seahawks? They're
Yeah.
gonna be they're gonna contend for the top pick easily.
Oh, okay. I thought you scared me for a second.
I don't know where you're going with the
contention. You scared me for a second there, buddy.
I mean, you just said top 10. I know we're trying to be nice here, but no, the Seahawks they're gonna compete for the number 1 pick.
Okay, all right, okay. I mean, yeah, I didn't know where I would go with that, so that's why I said top 10 just to like have some space, because like I didn't know like how bad they would be, and I don't know if you guys would agree, but yeah, they'll be in contention for one of the worst teams in football next year, and you know what? They deserve it. Pete Carroll deserves it because, you disrespect Russell Wilson. This is what happens. But, look, they got their draft capital from the Russell Wilson trade. I do think Charles Cross was the right pick, especially because Evan Neal and Ekim got drafted ahead. So, like, they won with best available option for offensive line. They keep DK Metcalf, so, and, they have their wide receiver. Tyler Lockett's still there. I think Noah Fant is there from the Russell Wilson trade. yeah, but none of this matters because their quarterback position is ass. So not a lot to talk about with the Seahawks, but yeah, I mean, I guess we'll go because we have to. We'll talk about them. So, Jurg, expectations for the Seahawks here?
Um, I kind of already said it. They're going to contend for being the worst team, one of the worst teams in the league. They're easily going to be the bottom feeder of this division. Now, are they randomly going to win a divisional game? Probably, because the NFC West for so long, even when teams are bad, like even the worst team in this division will find a way to win a game somehow. It's just super weird. I don't really understand it, but that's just how the NFC West goes. I think like you're just player watching, and I know I've said this for a couple teams, but this is and maybe this is more of like an NHL and NBA thing because we have 82 game seasons, but you're literally just player watching. You're hoping that Charles Cross proves to be the franchise left tackle for the next quarterback that comes down the line. You are hoping that DK Metcalf stays on. Like I know he just resigned, but like you're hoping he doesn't get pissed off enough to like want to leave this team. You're hoping that the running back that you got, Kenneth Walker, I think out of Michigan State, you're hoping that he can maybe become the new number one back because Chris Carson had to retire due to injury. Yet another Seattle Seahawks guy who had to retire within the last like half decade due to like injuries. A bunch of these, like a bunch of this roster is just going to be hoping that draft picks pan out, especially previous draft picks it made in the regime, like the previous firsts and seconds. I think are going to be heavily scrutinized for progress purposes. But that like that's what you're hoping for. I don't. My only thing is I don't understand why Pete Carroll stayed with this team. I don't know why he didn't retire. Like I think he's like I want to see the list of coaches that are going to go from Super Bowl win to like a 2 to 3 win season, and that might be their last year because I don't see any reason in the world that Pete Carroll should want to stay on this team anything past this season. He should help them get their next quarterback or help them like he should be there to help lead this team along this tough season. They're going to get their new quarterback and then they get their new head coach because to me there's absolutely zero reason he should want to be there. I know he loves football, but god, it's going to be so painful this season for Seattle. Like it's like you mentioned Drew Lock and Geno Smith. If both of them are not the option, there's always Jacob Eason, lads. So it's just not looking good in Seattle. Hope for the best for the certain young players on this team, Seattle, and maybe get some trades in with the older guys you have on this team. uh, there's Tyler Lockett, who I think could definitely be trade bait come the deadline because there's no reason for him to want to be on this team long term when you have a 29-year-old wide receiver. You look on the defense, Shelby Harris, he could be a guy that you trade at the deadline because again, like the older players on this team should want to get traded to other teams, and it would behoove Seattle to want to do that because then they get something back for these guys like a Quandre Diggs, guys like that. So Seattle, to me, heavy favorite come the NFL trade deadline to hopefully make some moves and get some more draft picks. But other than that, that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't much to really say good about the Seattle Seahawks going into this season. It's going to be interesting to see who they pick as a starting quarterback. I see that Drew Lock is probably the favorite to do that, but I know there's people in that organization that like Geno Smith, and when he came in for Russell Wilson last year, he had a couple good games and he had a couple good stretches there. So it's going to be interesting to see who they pick, but at the end of the day, I think it will be Drew Lock because that's who they kind of traded for, and I know he's either his first preseason game he had a pretty good game. But as for the rest of his team and the expectations for this team, I don't have much. They're definitely the worst team in that division by far. I don't even think it's close. Uh, like like Jurg and Chris mentioned, they're going to be right up there for the number one pick next season, and maybe that is their plan going into it. That's why they didn't really go out and try to trade for a quarterback or draft a quarterback. They were just really looking forward to this quarterback class. Um, but something that Jurg mentioned is Pete Carroll, how he could be fired after this year. On this podcast right before the offseason, I mentioned how I thought maybe Pete Carroll would be one of the coaches surprise fired coaches this offseason. I thought Russell Wilson be traded, and I thought right then and there they would fire Pete Carroll and just kind of start brand new. Obviously, it didn't do that, but after a season that they're gonna have this year, where they're a bottom five team in the league, I think that would be the perfect time to do it. You know, having a bottom five record, and then you obviously bring in a new QB. It would be a perfect time to bring a new QB in with a new head coach and kind of mesh them together and have them grow together. So I think that's maybe what Seattle's looking for. Maybe that's why they didn't fire Pete Carroll yet. But really, no expectations for this team. They're going to be the worst team in the league. Like Jurg mentioned, they could probably trade a couple of veterans at the deadline too to get more picks. Um, Probably keep DK Metcalf just to have that number one receiver for when a new quarterback comes in. But guys like Tyler Lockett, maybe Rashad Penny, maybe some guys on this defense. I could see them definitely moving them at the deadline for some extra picks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's time. It's time, Seattle. It's time. I'm taking a hiatus from my Seattle Seahawks fandom until things get straightened out. All right, next team. This could be interchangeable, but I think I've concluded that the next team in this list will be the Arizona Cardinals. Are we in consensus?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so Arizona Cardinals third in this division after I believe they were they first or second last year in the NFC West? Was it Rams?
Second, I think.
Someone fact check that for me, please, while I
I'll do it.
go through this. Thank you. So yeah, Arizona Cardinals, they're gonna be third in this division. So DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for the first 6 games because you know, they traded for Hollywood Brown, so I think he will be an alternative until Hopkins gets back. But when Hopkins does get back, that's a pretty solid 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position. They re-signed Kyler Murray. I think it was 5 years, $230 million. They did lose Christian Kirk, and they did lose Chandler Jones. So the the Cardinals are in a weird spot because they've made ever since Kyler Murray came into the scene, it's been very like they've improved like year by year. They finally made the playoffs last season. They got wrecked by the Rams in like the first round. They got hit with the injury bug as well. It's weird because like the Cardinals like they tend to kind of fall off in the second half of the season, but they're a fun team to watch. They're very offensive oriented. They have some really good weapons, I believe. We already talked about it. DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown. You have James Conner. You have your Zach Ertz, who I think, yeah. So you have your Zach Ertz. They have offensive weapons. I just think their defense is taking a hit without Chandler Jones now. But yeah, it's kind of weird to like predict how the Cardinals will end up. I think they'll be a good team, right? But that loss against the Rams, I get like the inexperience factor really kicked in. I wonder what adjustments they will make, going into the season. Like, how do they get better, right? So, I don't know. Like, do I trust Cliff Kingsbury to make those adjustments as a head coach in terms of just like how do we take that loss, that playoff loss, and then how do we use it as like motivation? I don't know. Cliff Kingsbury is a little sus to me, but yeah. Jurg has confirmed the Cardinals were second place last year at 11-6. They were 11-6. I know that
Yeah.
They started
remember,
like 6-0.
yeah, they started off pretty high. That's why. Okay, all right.
Well,
So
they
yeah,
lost. Well, I'll wait until I make my points about them to mention how they finished.
yeah. So I mean, look, the Cards, they're good. Like, I still think this is a possible wild card team. Don't get it wrong, but I just think in this division, the next two teams we'll talk about are better than them, and I do think the loss of DeAndre Hopkins is going to sting. Um, I know I know they traded for Hollywood Brown, but again, Hollywood Brown isn't DeAndre Hopkins. So, fun team. Definitely could make the wild card. It's a wait and see approach with the Cardinals. So, Dame, let me start with you. Expectations and thoughts for the Cardinals into the next season?
So I think it's the same story really every year with them. We know they're gonna probably start off pretty hot and everyone's gonna fall in love with them and ask if they're a real contender. And then second half of the season, Kyle Murray's gonna get dinged up or he's gonna get rattled or tired and they're gonna kind of slow down in the second half. And that's what it's been for the past 2 to 3 years. And I'm not going to be surprised if that's the same thing that happens this year. I don't know what's going to change. I don't think that Kyler Murray's contract is going to make that big of a difference because he's still running quarterback. He's still a small quarterback. He's still a quarterback that is going to get hit a lot. And then when he does get hit, he's going to get hurt. And when he does get hurt, like what's going to happen? Is it what the past 2 years is going to happen where he kind of slows down? He's not the same quarterback he was in the first half. Or is he going to be able to fight through it and like be the same quarterback he is in the first half where he usually is, where a lot of people usually have him as the MVP. But on the defensive side, I know Chris mentioned losing Chandler Jones. That hurts. Who knows with J.J. Watt, his injury history. I know they lost a couple other guys. And obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is out for like 6 games or something like that. But what I do like is they did add Marquise Brown, and having that connection with Kyler Murray is going to be really good for them because he's that deep threat. And we saw what they did at Oklahoma. They were explosive, man. Like, they were putting up a lot of points each and every single week. And I wouldn't be surprised if they just pick up right where they left off from college because Kyler Murray throws a beautiful deep ball and Marquise Brown super fast and runs past all these cornerbacks and safeties. So You're going to see a lot of that connection this year. And when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, if him and Kyler Murray can be healthy and really put together a great season together, I think that's going to be an offense that's going to be very dangerous. And not to mention James Conner at the running back position. Completely forgot about him. I know they lost Chase Edmonds, but James Conner, man, that guy was a beast last year. From catching the ball to blocking to scoring touchdowns. Like, they have the recipe to have a really great offense going into the season, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to Kyler Murray's health and consistency through the second half of the year.
Yeah, this team. It, so I have issues with mainly Cliff Kingsbury for the most part because I just don't think he's that great of a coach. And this is coming from someone who I will grant it, I will admit this. Halfway through last season, and I stress halfway at the midseason point, I did have him as coach of the year because they were electric last season. But then the good old Cliff Kingsbury curse of second half of the seasons clicked in, and it all fell apart. Like I kind of prelude to earlier, they lost 5 of their last 6 games uh, last season. So they had the amazing start. Forget it's like 6-7-0. I think they were like 10-0 before they lost their first game last season. They were doing phenomenal, and then it just all completely fell apart. Not the first time that's happened to the Cliff Kingsbury Arizona Cardinals teams. In 2020, they lost 5 of their last 7 to just miss out on being the 7th seed, because remember, that was the first year of the expanded playoffs. And then 2019, they lost 7 of their last 9 games. It's not good to go 2-7 in a 9-game stretch. I don't care if it was his first season, rookie Kyler Murray, et cetera, et cetera. Losing 7 of your last 9 is not good. And this has been an issue plaguing him since his college days, but I'm not going to go into those stats in particular. Kind of like you guys mentioned, the loss of DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is really going to hurt this team. I have some doubts on this wide receiving core just because we haven't seen enough from the rest of this team. Rondale Moore is a very nice deep threat. He is a great straight line speed receiver, but can he do more? How much is he going to get better here in year 2? They have not used in any way, shape, or form Andy Isabella ever since he came to this team. I think that is an absolute travesty because I think Andy Isabella could actually be a decent wide receiver for this team. They just don't use him for some reason. And I think AJ Green, like, he's just old, man. Let's be real. And Marquise Brown, look, the only critique of the of the Ravens trading Marquise Brown away was that, now Lamar Jackson on paper doesn't have any bona fide receivers. Let's be real here, though. Hollywood Brown, not that great. Like, he'll be good in the meantime. He'll look a lot better when DeAndre Hopkins is back, but not that great of a receiver. Like, he's great speed demon, deep threat. Again, he's another Rondale Moore. So you have some complacency there with those two. Like you said, Chris, Zach Ertz is good. The offensive line is decent. Are they going to be able to keep it up once again this season like they did last year? That's a big question mark.
Yeah, they're lucky they're lucky that Murray's good in the pocket, that he could fucking run his ass off. That's why he could avoid shit. That's why I feel like their O-line, granted it's not great, they could get away with their shortcomings just because of, Murray's speed and his ability to get away from shit.
True, but then at some point,
Yeah, it's gonna
when does
catch
that
up.
come back?
Yeah.
And it always seems to in the second
Yeah.
half of the season.
Yeah.
Like Dame said, excuse me, Chandler Jones. Like, I think that is going to be a big loss because I look at the rest of this team. I don't see a single bona fide, proven 10-sack pass rusher on this squad. I really don't. I know JJ Watt has done it before, but he's been hurt so many times over the last 5 seasons. Like, he's not the same JJ Watt. He's nowhere near the same JJ Watt that he even was before he left Houston. You have, like, just throughout this defensive line, it's decent pieces, but it's nothing special. The linebacking slash defensive back core is really where the strength of the defense lies, but that's mainly because I'm still waiting. Like, Isaiah Simmons had a good year 2, but I really want to see if he could have a better year 3. And Zaven Collins had an underwhelming rookie season. That was a first round pick. How are they going to use him? It's almost like Zaven Collins, he was given the Isaiah Simmons treatment. He didn't really get a lot of consistent playing time from this from the team in his first season. Now Isaiah Simmons again had a good year 2. I want to see more from him. And now Zaven Collins, you got to step up this season. And then the cornerback situation, I think, Byron Murphy is a good corner. It's relatively speaking, it's decent. The safety core of Budda Baker being there, like, he's the guy. But then aside from him, like, who's his co-star there? It's kind of like a revolving door / open situation. So this is a good team. This is a decent team. I should say, like, I technically have them tied with the Niners for myself personally. But if I had to give a slight edge to somebody, I would say San Fran, which we're going to get into more detail with that in a few, so I'm not going to break that down now. But yeah, I think like we talk about the shine coming off of the newness or whatever. Like I think I think this is going to be the season where we really see a lot of like what Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray's offense is, because like I will say this, Kyler Murray, I like the kid. I think he's great. I think he's always improved. I think he makes this offense look a lot better than what it is. I think it takes a specific quarterback to make Cliff Kingsbury's offense work in the NFL, and I think that's what Kyler Murray is. And if Kyler Murray gets hurt again this season, I'm gonna say this: if the Cardinals finish like below 500, I'd call for Cliff Kingsbury's job. Personally speaking, that's my take on it. But aside from that, they should be in the playoff next year because the NFC is wide open. I think that's the big thing. If they were in the AFC, oh no, I don't think they'd make the playoffs. But because the NFC is way more wide open, they should be a wild card team.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think we all agree. Okay. And then, like Jurg mentioned, this leads us to the 49ers, who we all have as second place in this division. Yeah, fellas, 49ers, they seem to always be good. I just think they kind of get plagued by injuries. Last year, they did make the NFC, did they make the conference finals?
Yeah, NFC
Yeah.
Championship game.
NFC, yeah. So yeah, 49ers made the NFC Championship game after they they beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in Green Bay, of course. Neither here nor there. But look, I think the main story here, they did re-sign Debo finally after months of speculation of what's going to happen. They re-signed their number one guy. Again, we already know how good their defense is. You know, there's expectations for Brandon Ayuk. So the main story here is Trey Lance, who's going to be their starting quarterback. I think it's we're going to beat a dead horse here, but we always use this. We used this conversation a lot last week when it came to the Jets, when it came to the Eagles. How far will Trey Lance take him? And I do think because he's on the 49ers and because they're already a really solid quality team, like it's going to be a bit easier for him. But I do think the expectations are a bit high right now and the pressure is on. I do have faith in Trey Lance. I think we're all Trey Lance fans, but there's going to be some growing pains, but ultimately I think he'll be fine. I think Kyle Shanahan will take care of him. In this case, we're going to have to see like a win. It's going to be interesting to watch how like a win now team deals with their starting quarterback having like it's his second year, but it's his first year being a starting quarterback. You know, so it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. But I have high expectations for the 49ers. I love the roster top to bottom. You get Debo back, which is obviously the most important thing. But yeah, who ended off? I think yeah, Jurg, you talked about it. Expectations for the 49ers next season.
So I think for me, myself personally, I think some people might be shocked. I think the 49ers are the most boom or bust team in this division, actually. I think they have the potential to be the double-digit win team that I think a good chunk of people are expecting. But I also actually think things could go horribly wrong for them. And I think there are a little, it doesn't jump out the screen, but there are little bits and pieces as to what could go wrong with this team. The three things that I think could ultimately undo this team: number one, health. I think for the 49ers skill position group, I think for Trey Lance, it's all there for him to have all the support possible, but they need to be healthy. Now, I'm not worried about the running back room because, dear God, Kyle Shanahan, I've said it once, I'll say it again, Kyle Shanahan could get any of us 50 yards on like 8 carries with how he schemes things up. He's just absolutely phenomenal when it comes to running backs. You give him a running back, he's going to get them to rush well. But it's the wide receiving core. Brandon Ayuk needs to have a healthy season this year. It can't be a thing where he's missing time, he's hampered. No, he needs to have a healthy season. Not being healthy last season, I know he technically played 17 games, but I think he was a little bit hampered by stuff. He had 826 yards, 5 touchdowns on 56 catches. I think a fully bona fide healthy season from him, I think he's going to be great next to Deebo Samuel. I think if George Kittle can be fully healthy, I think that's going to be a big thing too. Again, missed 3 games last season, still had 910 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that could get even better if he plays a full season. But also at the same time, it's a new quarterback there, so that's where it goes. So the health to me of the skill position group is factor number one of the success of this team. Factor number two: how quick is the offensive line going to perform really well? They lost several interior pieces of that line this past offseason. Laken Tomlinson was one of them, and the even bigger one was the veteran Alex Mack, a guy who will be up for Hall of Fame discussion when his time comes after his eligibility, once he's eligible for it. It's going to take a lot to replace both of those guys in the interior, and is that going to potentially hurt the effect of the Kyle Shanahan running scheme and just the overall protection that Trey Lance is going to get. Because what's the big thing when it comes to protecting young quarterbacks, boys? It's having a good offensive line. And while we talk about left tackle, the interior to avoid that kind of bull rush, especially with the defensive tackle talent of the last team in this division we have yet to touch upon, that's a big deal. That is a massive deal in this entire thing. So there's that. And then I think the number one thing, just the performance of the defense, but particularly the performance of the defensive back crew. You mentioned itself, Chris. I think the defensive line, even though I think he should be performing better, they have Eric Armstead, they have Nick Bosa. You got that linebacking core that has Wagner and Dre Greenlaw, really good linebacker tandem there between the two of them. But there's no notable names on the defensive back crew. Like there are decent players. There are guys that they hope can have good years, but there's no one like jumps out to you and is like, oh, I know this person, like kind of Jason Verrett, but he's been a guy who's torn his ACL several times, which sucks because I actually was a big Jason Verrett fan when he was at his peak with the Chargers. But I think the defensive backfield and how healthy they are and how they'll perform, I think is going to be the ultimate difference for this team. And you could also kind of argue like the health of the defense as well. Like if Fred Wagner and Nick Bosa miss time, this defense is going to play significantly worse. So um, I think the Niners deserve to be considered in second. Once again, I personally have them tied with the Cardinals for me. But yeah, I think like even before the Trey Lance discussion, I think those three factors are going to make a massive difference. Health of the skill position group, offensive line, and how the defensive backfield is gonna play. Especially with some of the not so much for the Seahawks, but in that division, you have 4 games against some top tier quarterbacks and receivers. Where even with the Seahawks, at least there's Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So I have some questions about this team. I still think they're talented. I still think they're great, but 49ers, they're gonna be someone you got to keep a little bit of an eye on here.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously we all agree that 49ers second best team in this division, and they were last year. I didn't think they would be, but they were. Jimmy Garoppolo got it done for them, but clearly now they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo and they're going to Trey Lance era. I know people saw flashes of Trey Lance in that one preseason game where he threw a like 79-yard touchdown to some whack receiver that no one knows about. So his numbers kind of looked inflated, but if you really take that one pass out, the guy was like 3 for 4 with 25 yards, or 4 for 5 with 25 yards, or something like that. Like that's not good. And then reports are coming out of training camp that he's not having that good of a training camp, that he's still adjusting to things. And honestly, that's how I expected. But throughout the long run, I do believe he'll start off pretty slow in the start of the season, but I think by the second half, he's really going to pick it up. He's a dual threat quarterback that is able to run the ball, and that's something that in this NFL is extremely valuable to have. He's going to keep defenses on their toes. He's going to give them something different to look at compared to Jimmy Garoppolo, where he really just threw those mid-range, like midfield passes, short passes, extremely accurately. He was really good at it, but he just couldn't take them to the next level. He didn't have that running ability. He didn't have that deep throw. That's something that Trey Lance has both of. Like he may not be as accurate as Jimmy Garoppolo in the short game, but he adds 2 different elements to his offense that there wasn't before in the deep ball and the running game with the quarterback. So I think Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in the entire league, and I think he's going to do wonders with Trey Lance. But like I said, I do think they'll start off slow. Then people will think, oh, the Cardinals are going to kind of catch up to them or going to be better than them. And then by the second half, you're going to see Trey Lance get a lot more comfortable with this offense. You're going to see him make a lot more accurate throws, better throws, and him in that defense. And then obviously, 49ers defense is always good. Like even if they lose guys, they lose coordinators, they're always a good defense. So that the combination of that and the combination of how dynamic this offense can be with Trey Lance at quarterback, I do think they'll be a very dangerous team and definitely a wild card team. I don't know how much stock I'd put into them winning the Super Bowl or anything like that, because this technically is like Trey Lance's rookie year. And he's not Patrick Mahomes where he's going to go win a Super Bowl in his first year starting. But I really do like what this team is doing, and I do have high hopes for the offense and Trey Lance moving forward. I think their ceiling is much higher now than it was with Jimmy Garoppolo, even if they might not be a true contender this year because of how young and inexperienced Trey Lance is.
Okay. All right. That leads us to the Rams. Fellas, we don't have to take much time on this. Just let me get through the notable offseason moves for them. They signed Allen Robinson after they're likely losing OBJ. Like I don't think they're gonna keep OBJ. I don't even know if OBJ is gonna play. I keep hearing about where he's gonna play, but I don't know. Is OBJ even gonna be healthy to play? They signed Bobby Wagner. They did lose Von Miller. Andrew Whitworth retired. Guys, this is a Super Bowl contender. I know there was reports about Matt Stafford dealing with some some elbow issue, which was, I think, they played it off as just like, rest, let him rest for now. But, I do think that could be serious long term. I don't know, but I know he played a little bit through it last season, because apparently this has been like a reoccurring thing. But it's definitely something to keep our eye out on. But yeah, this is a Super Bowl favorite, guys. This is for both of you. I guess we'll have the same combo that we did with the Bills last week. Is the NFC theirs to lose? Either one of you could answer this. Is the NFC the Rams to lose?
I think so.
Okay.
For myself personally, I think there's only two definitive teams right now in the preseason that can challenge them, and that's the Packers and the Buccaneers.
I don't even
And
think the Packers can. I'm sorry.
I mean, even the Buccaneers, you have to argue they kind of got worse in certain places as well.
They
So
did, but
if
again, we talked about this. I think we all have more faith in the Bucks.
But if we're looking at who their two main like just for argument's sake, if those are their two main teams of competition, everyone is going to bring up, and they both got worse in the offseason, who's going to challenge them?
Yeah.
So like the Rams, and I know you didn't finish it, Chris, but they also added Bobby Wagner.
No, I did say Bobby Wagner.
Oh, my bad. Okay,
it's all good.
My bad. But now they have forget star. They have a Hall of Famer on all three levels of defense now. They have Aaron Donald, they have Bobby Wagner, they have Jalen Ramsey. Those are all going to be Hall of Famers when their careers are said and done. There, you have the offense now with Cooper Kupp, and you mentioned this, and this has been a recurring fixture on the show because I've been praying for so many years now that Allen Robinson finally goes to a real team and a real quarterback, Chris, and it finally happened.
Yep.
And now it's just bliss. You have a really good running back room in Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. There, Cam Akers is going to be healthy. We hope, by the way. But even still, like he tore his Achilles last year, and he actually came back to play in the playoffs. Which
yes, that's wild.
What a warrior. Yeah. At the end of the day, like this Rams team, I know you kind of mentioned with the 49ers, Chris. For me, the Rams are the team where top to bottom, I love almost every aspect of that roster. Like even though they did lose Andrew Whitworth, which was a tough loss for them, it is going to be a tough loss for them to lose just his presence and his level of play on the offensive line. They have the guys there that I think they fully believe in to take his place. I think Joe Noteboom is going to be the starter on the at left tackle, and they extended him for a reason. Like they believe he will be the heir apparent to the left tackle spot for all intents and purposes. So the Rams, to me, they're the definition of, to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. To be the man, you got to beat the man, baby. And that's what the Rams are to me. So I don't see anyone challenging this team right now in the playoffs.
Okay, we'll end it off with this for both of you actually. Which team? And I know you said no one could challenge them. Which team has the best shot at beating the Rams?
In the conference or the division?
Conference. No. I in the division, I would say if healthy, I'd say the 49ers pose the biggest threat. I think we're all in agreement with that. But let's say the whole conference. I guess sans the Bucks.
I think that's like the only choice, to be honest. Because what other team do you like? Aaron Rodgers hates his receivers already.
Yeah,
so
bro.
I don't know how much stock I'm gonna put into the Packers now. Might have to redo that segment of the podcast. But then you have NFC East. Like, let's just be honest. No one from there is going to be real competition. Like, the only two really would be the Bucks, and then you just give the 49ers a fighting chance because them and the Rams just always play really good games.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, for the Rams, I don't have really much to say, but I do think they're the favorite in the entire conference. I do think they're definitely the favorite in this division. I know that Matthew Stafford thing came out with his elbow, but I think they kind of cleared that up already. Like, he's fine. Bringing Allen Robinson for Robert Woods, I think, is definitely an upgrade. They're still looking to add Odell. Obviously, he wouldn't play for much of the season, but we saw how big he was for them in the postseason. Adding Bobby Wagner to that defense, which was already stacked, is absolutely ridiculous and it's an embarrassment of riches. So I think this team from top to bottom, defense, offense, special teams, coaching, I think they have it all to really repeat, to be honest. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, but I don't really see anyone in the NFC stopping them because, like I mentioned, we talked about the Bucs. I think Tom Brady won't be really the same quarterback as he was last year.
It's a bold take.
And they have a lot of injuries themselves. I think if I had to really, it's a bold take, but I think the 49ers have a better chance of doing it than the Bucs do because they really match up so well against each other and play each other 2 times a year and seen each other so many times. That I think in the playoffs, if they played each other, I'd give the 49ers a better chance to take down the Rams and the Bucs.
All right. Going to be interesting. I know the Rams have the toughest schedule in the NFL, but is it really the toughest schedule when you're like one of the top 3 teams in the NFL? Let's just keep that in mind. All right, let's move on over to the AFC West because this is the main event here, fellas. This is the division in NFL. Now, I want people to know that last in the AFC West could still be a playoff team. That's how good this division is. All 4 of these teams could very well make the playoffs. And if I was a betting man, if I was a degenerate gambling man, which I no longer am, I would have made. I mean, actually, I don't know. 3 teams I think are likely to make the playoffs in this division. That's just me. But we'll talk about it. But last place in this division, again, does not mean that we think that they're going to be asked. It's just that it's a death division. I got Raiders. Are we in agreement?
Ooh.
No.
I have the Broncos.
I have the Broncos as well.
Ooh, okay. Well, let's talk about all right, but let's just talk about the Raiders first because the Broncos, I think, had a more notable offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I guess you could make the argument with the Raiders too, but let's just go Raiders since I kind of just mentioned them first. So they re-signed Derek Carr. I think it was for 3 years, $141 million. The numbers, I don't know for sure, but I know they re-signed him. They hired Josh McDaniels this offseason, right? As their coach?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was this offseason. They signed Chandler Jones, so it's pair him with Max Crosby, and yeah, so obviously you beef up the defense. And then, of course, the more notable move is that they traded for Davante Adams, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. He reunites with Derek Carr. I know they went to college together. They played together. So you give Derek Carr his best friend and the best weapon in the NFL. So this, I think the Raiders did make the playoffs last season, right? And I do think they have some really good weapons. They have Hunter Renfrow as well. I do think, I don't know, man. There's just, I think it comes down to whether I trust Derek Carr or not. And usually like it's hit or miss with him in my eyes, but I do think the connection with Davante Adams, like no matter what I think of him, I think the connection is there, and I think Davante Adams will make anything work. So yeah, I don't have like a reason why they'll be last place. I think this is just like who you think is gonna be better. They're gonna be better. They're gonna be good. I think they're gonna be like really fun to watch as well. And I think the Raiders are up, but I don't know. I think I just have more faith in Russell Wilson. I think I'm more of a Russell Wilson guy than anyone else in this podcast. I just think what he's going to do for the Broncos, he's going to bring out the best in those offensive weapons in Denver, but that's just me. I guess we're going to interchange here because like you guys have the Broncos last. I mean, speaking of the Broncos, they traded for Russell Wilson. They made some minor moves. They signed some DJ Jones. They signed Randy Gregory. Yeah, I think the Broncos, I think, were decent. Like they didn't have a real quarterback. I think it was Teddy Bridgewater holding down the fort. I think Drew Lock as well. You get Russell Wilson, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He has some weapons to play with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. Who's the running back? Is it Javonte Williams?
Yeah, him and Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, so Russell Wilson has offensive weapons to play with. I think the defense is great as well. I don't know. I just think I'm more bullish on the Broncos because of their quarterback. And I think that's where the difference is. I understand that Derek Carr may have better weapons, but I think Russell Wilson is like obviously like a substantially better quarterback than Derek Carr to a point where I think he elevates the Broncos a bit more. Offensive minded coach. I do think the offense, I think that was the issue in Seattle is that like Russell Wilson was at odds with Pete Carroll in terms of like what the play calling should be sometimes. I think Pete Carroll like took it over way too much and didn't take Russell Wilson's opinion into account. And I think that's what the Broncos are going to do here. They're going to give like a lot of free reign to Russell. But yeah, I think their offensive weapons in Denver, they're going to elevate because of Russell Wilson. And I don't know. Again, this could be interchangeable. I just think I'm a little bit more higher on the Broncos than most people for some reason. Maybe it's because I love Russell Wilson too much. But who did I end with? I think I ended with Dame. Dame, go ahead. You guys both had the Broncos last, but I ended off with you. So what do you think?
So on the Broncos?
I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
All right, so the Broncos, the reason I'd have them last place is because opposite of you, I'm just not that big of a believer in Russell Wilson. I know it's obviously a huge upgrade over what they had last year, and they have the weapons with Sutton, Hamler, Jeudy. You have Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. They traded Noah Fant, but they have the other guy with Albert something. With a really long last name. He's a really good tight end as well. Their defense is always good too. They always give the Chiefs problems, even though they haven't beat the Chiefs in like 6 years. but they always give the Chiefs problems, and that's kind of who you got to match yourself up to in this division. So I don't think they're going to be bad, but this division is just so stacked, and that you have to pick a worse team in the division. And I'm just going to go with the Broncos solely based off the fact that I just don't have that much trust in Russell Wilson. I've seen him deteriorate year by year and get worse year by year and just not be the same guy that he used to be when he was bringing the Seahawks to the Super Bowl and having them contend each and every single year. So I just have a lot more faith in the three teams above the Broncos than I do in the Broncos, and that's solely based on the fact that Russell Wilson is their quarterback.
Dave, keep going. Talk about the Raiders then, since
So the Raiders, I know. Okay, it's hard to really say that Derek Carr is better than Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson is so much more accomplished, but I just have more faith in Derek Carr working with Josh McDaniels with an offense with Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, Kenyon Drake, Josh Jacobs, a solid offensive line, and just playing in Vegas and that energy that organization has and that fan base has. I just have a lot more faith in Derek Carr getting it done with that Vegas team, especially since he's been there already and has that chemistry with them compared to Russell Wilson, who's coming in this first year and he's going to have to work with different receivers, get chemistry with different guys, see what guys like it, which way, what the coach is like and stuff like that compared to Derek Carr, who has had Hunter Renfrow for a couple years already. Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, this offensive line. He's played with Devontae Adams in college. Like, Derek Carr already has a foundation there, and that's why I truly believe that I have more faith in that offense being more consistent than I do in the Broncos. That's really what it comes down to. It's just a familiarity that Derek Carr has with that offense compared to what Russell Wilson does.
yeah, Drew, you could talk about both teams now.
Copy. Like, for me, my big difference between these two sides is that, and I kind of did this last week when it came to the Eagles and the Cowboys, I give a lot more of it, honestly, to the Raiders than I do to the Broncos. So let's start with the quarterback. I will begrudgingly give it to Denver, although I don't think Russ is as far ahead of Derek Carr now as I think most people would have had him like even 2-3 years ago. I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people want to give it credit for, but I'll give it to the Broncos. Running back room, I know people love Javonte Williams, but I guess we've all forgotten what Josh Jacobs was early in his career. And now that I think it's not going to be John Gruden dicking around with everything now, I think, and Mike Mayock being a stooge, I think I'm expecting Josh Jacobs to have a good year this year. So I'm going to give running back personally to the Raiders. Wide receiving core, it's not even close. And include the tight ends here. I'm giving it to the Raiders. Look, I love Cortland Sutton. I'm very happy he came back and had a good 2021, but he needs to stay healthy and have a better year this year. They already lost one of their wide receivers to a torn ACL. I think it was Tim Patrick. So there's that. They need Jerry Jeudy to step up. They need Hamler to step up. Like, I see the need to step up more than a lot of those guys. And also at the tight end spot, Raiders have one of the top 5 tight ends in the league. Broncos don't. So there's that. Offensive line, it's pretty even for the most part. Like, I don't see either side having a definitive edge in the offensive line part more than the other. And that's kind of my big thing when it comes to the Broncos, and like people are hyping them with the offense. Like, okay, Broncos, your offensive line is better than the Seahawks. That's not a high bar to clear. What else am I looking at? Like, they do have Graham Glasgow, or Graham Glasgow. I forget how his last name spelled at the moment, but you have him that they took from the Lions, I think, a couple years ago. And you have Garrett Bowles, who is a pretty good left tackle. I'll say he's in the upper third tier. I would say most likely of left tackles, at least upper half. The Raiders, yes, there's a little bit of offensive line work there, but it's not far behind. Like, I don't give a definitive edge to either side. The pass rush, it's not even close. You got Max Crosby and Chandler Jones now on the Raiders, so they get that by default. The linebacking core between these two teams, I don't have a personal favorite there, so again, it's pretty close to even. Although I will say the Raiders do have a member of my all-name team in Divine Diablo on their squad, so I give a little bit to them. And then defensive back crew, I will give that to the Broncos because everyone was saying how that just the defensive back crew alone of the Broncos last season was like a Super Bowl caliber cornerback and safety crew. It was just the rest of the team couldn't live up to it. I give a lot of credit. I give a lot more faith into this Raiders team because they were the ones that overcame a lot last season, and they only got better to me with the additions they made. I think Devontae Adams, like kind of like Dane mentioned, is going to make a massive difference, I think, when it comes to the Raiders and how much more wide open Hunter Renfrow is going to be and how his role is going to be just definitively more defined. It's like, hey, you are this because we have Adams, Darren Waller, you are no longer the definitive number one. We have Devontae Adams. He's going to help out a lot, and I don't think people realize that. Whereas with the Broncos, like, I'm sorry, man. I'm not behind this whole let Russ cook situation because for all intents and reports that I remember from last season, Pete Carroll was starting to let Russ quote unquote cook a little bit more before he got hurt. And it didn't make a difference. Like, I don't understand why we are mythologizing Russell Wilson. Like, yes, he's had a bad
Great word.
he had a bad offensive line his last couple years in Seattle. I feel bad for him. Okay. He has to deal with future and his BS in real life with his family. Okay. I don't give a damn about the rest of it other than that. Like, I don't understand why we need to be so nice to Russell Wilson and let Russ cook and all that. Bro, you're not Aaron Rodgers. You're not Tom Brady. You're not, I mean, he's not in the league anymore, but you're not Drew Brees. You're not. You don't deserve, I'm sorry, he doesn't deserve to have that right because when he was like, there were pockets where Pete Carroll started to let him quote unquote cook. There was zero difference in the offense. So this whole let Russ cook thing, like you want to be the end all be all, say okay, and you can be the end all be all, and the end all be all will be the Broncos are going to miss the playoffs if you just let him do everything and quote unquote let Russ cook. Like I'm sorry, he is not at his peak anymore. He's just not, and I felt like this for a while with Russell Wilson, and I think for a lot of different reasons that are not him, I think the Broncos will be good, but I do personally like. There's a little bit of a spoiler here. I have them being my lone AFC West team that doesn't make the playoffs because I think that division is going to cannibalize itself. I think someone has to miss out. And I think that the Broncos are going to be the team that just misses out there. I have a lot more faith in the Raiders. I think, again, like I don't think the gap between Wilson and Carr is that big. And here's my hot take. I wouldn't be shocked if we start considering Derek Carr better than Russell Wilson by the end of this season. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that were the case. So all in all, kind of like with Dame, I got the Broncos at 4th place and the Raiders at 3rd place. I give a lot of advantages to them. And even though it's a very slight thing, McDaniels at least has some head coaching experience. And I think he's learned from that. I think he's trying to not be Belichick, which is where almost every single Belichick disciple fails. Actually, not almost every single one of them fails at that. I think he's starting to realize it's like, hey, the less I act like Belichick here, the better, because I'm not that dude. But he can still be the right coach for this team. So I'll give Josh McDaniels, his credit for now. I think he's looking like the right coach here. Broncos, I'm always bullish on a first time head coach for the most part, or bearish. Which one is the right word there?
Well, you're skeptical or you're high?
Skeptical.
So you're bearish.
So I'm bearish. I'm very bearish on first year head coaches unless there is something definitive where I'm like, yes, you got to hire that guy. Hackett, I didn't feel that way. I'm like, okay, he had Aaron Rodgers next to him for a couple years. Like you could be Adam Gase here, where I mean, you're not gonna be a stupid idiot like Adam Gase, but you could have just been carried by the fact that the quarterback you were next to won back-to-back MVPs. So I got a lot more questions about the Broncos person. Sorry, Denver.
All good. Well, that was a good segment. Hot takes galore, possibly. All right. Brings us to our next two teams, which we do have as the top two teams. Let's make this a little interesting. Both of you unmute. So let's do this.
Okay.
On 3, we each say who we think is going to be first place in the division. On 3.
Okay.
Dame, you go with that?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Chargers.
Oh. Okay. See, here's the thing. And we'll make this an open discussion. We don't have to go one by one. We'll just, rebound off each other. I think I speak for Jurg. It is not easy to go against Patrick Mahomes here. It's not. It's not like we did this willingly. All right. But
I think you did.
No, I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan.
I picked the Chiefs every single game we predicted last
season. That is true. Well, let's before we get on to like the free convo, let's talk about the Chiefs' offseason moves. Ultimately, they lost Tyreek Hill, which is, massive here. They signed Juju Smith-Schuster, Damian's favorite player. They signed Justin Reed. They signed Marcus Valdez-Scantling. Signed Ronald Jones. I do think they had a really good draft. They drafted cornerback Trent McDuffie, which is kind of a steal. Defensive end Jurg Karlaftis, big favorite of Jurg's, and wide receiver Sky Moore. And Sky Moore, I think we all have some high expectations for him. So they had a pretty good draft. I do think the loss of Tyreek Hill is going to hurt them a lot. I say the pro is that it'll force the offense to be a little bit less predictable because a lot of times it's just improvising. Well, yeah, most of the time, like you had Mahomes improvising and he's just like, fuck it, I'll throw it to Tyreek Hill. I think with more diverse weapons here, because it's hard to replace Tyreek Hill, right? You have your Juju Smith-Schuster, you have your MVS, and then you have Sky Moore along with Travis Kelce, and their running back. Oh my God, what the fuck?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's it's gonna force Mahomes to kind of be more diverse the offense here. Like he's gonna have to trust other weapons and not just move 10 feet back into the pocket and just throw it up to Tyreek Hill, So, again, I think it'll allow for a more dynamic offense. I trust Andy Reid to make it more dynamic as well. The Chiefs were figured out a little bit, but again, I trust Mahomes and I trust Reid to make that adjustment. Like they know what to do now. And granted, they still made the AFC conference final game last year, so even in a down year, quote unquote, they were still great. And then it took it was an all time meltdown in the second half for them to lose. But again, it's hard to go against Mahomes, but the Chargers had an offseason. I feel like the Chargers have always had the Chiefs number. Not saying to a point where they always beat them, but they've given them problems, man. And Justin Herbert is a pending superstar quarterback, bro. We already talked about it. They have some really good weapons. They have Austin Eckler. They have Mike Williams. Who was their other wide receiver that they have?
Keenan Allen?
Yeah, Keenan Allen. There we go. Fucking yes, Keenan
Allen.
Him. No, I didn't mention him. I did not.
I don't know how you forgot the best guy.
my bad. But they have weapons. And then what they did this offseason is that I think, oh my God, did they get better defensively? They signed J.C. Jackson, and they traded for Khalil Mack. Oh my God, and you pair him with Joey Bosa. This defense is going to be insane, bro. Oh my God. And it's just they barely missed the playoffs last season. They have the Chiefs number, man, and I think the Chiefs got worse, whereas the Chargers got better. So I think that gap is closing. I think it's going to be close regardless. I think, and I think I speak for Jurg as well, because I know he has the Chargers as well. The Chargers, too. It could be interchangeable. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chargers finish second and the Chiefs finish first in this division. But I just think that gap closed exponentially this offseason between those two teams. Yeah, man, I think I speak for everyone in this podcast. We all love Herbie. We love Justin Herbert. And man, I think this is the year he makes the playoffs. He almost made it last year. If their head coach just wasn't very stubborn, maybe they would have both gone, both them and the Raiders, but yeah, that's my take on it. I think, I don't know, man. I hate putting my cards against Mahomes, but geez, there's something about the Chargers. We talked about this last week when we said who could pose the biggest threat to the Bills besides the Chiefs. And I think we went. Well, Damien picked the Ravens, of course. I picked the Chargers, but Jurg also said the Chargers as well, but he had to switch it because I made the Chargers pick. But this is a team that could, I think, challenge the Bills. So that says something, man. I think they're an AFC conference contender for sure. For sure. But any one of you could go here. I guess, Jurg, you go next since you have the Chargers as well.
Yeah, no, you said a lot of the reasons there. I think between the two teams, and it's very tough for me to pick against Patrick Mahomes because I don't ever want to pick against Patrick Mahomes ever again. But if I'm going to make an argument here, I think what the Chiefs lost compared to what they brought in and the ground they need to make up for, I think is going to cost them a few games. Now, like we said, Chris, we both have them as second because some people, I've seen some hot takes, some people have the Chiefs finishing third. I don't see him finishing below top two in the division still. Yeah, I just don't see it. I think there's still so much talent there. There's still Travis Kelce. I think Sky Moore is going to have a big rookie season. I fell in love with him during the draft process. That kid is supremely talented. Sadly, they have Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but I think Mahomes will be able to deal with that. You still have supreme offensive talent, but along the offensive line, it's still good, but I think some people are having questions, especially because they don't have Orlando Brown Jr. signed, and they need to try to figure that out with him. And the defense, they just lost a lot of pieces, especially in the defensive backfield. I think McDuffie was a great signing. There's a safety there, I think Thornhill, who they're hoping has a big breakout year. They're pretty young there, man. I do like the additions they made. I like all the draft picks they made, but you got to give the rookies time. There needs to be a gestation period to me where you can't rely on them, all of them from day one. Like there's a reason Karlaftis fell. Like even though we loved him in the pre-draft process, there's a reason why he fell. It's because he's going to outwork everyone, yes, but natural supreme talent, not as much as the other teams or as the other prospects that he was lined up against. Whereas I think with the Chargers, you said it best, Chris, like they just added and added and added. But the thing with the Chargers, this is not just one off season of work. This is several off seasons of them continuing to improve this team coming together now. It was them drafting Herbert and them making a concerted effort to try to surround that offensive line here. And you have Corey Linsley at center, who they got a couple off seasons ago. Matt Filer is one of the guards who they got, I think, before last season. And you have Rashawn Slater there, who they got last. Like it's been a concerted effort to make sure they get guys. And they also added Zion Johnson, by the way, who's arguably the best guard in this draft. So you only beefed up the offensive line more. And like you said, Chris, you add Khalil Mack and Sebastian Joseph Day alongside the front seven next to Joey Bosa. I think the best part about that is that Khalil Mack doesn't need to be the pass rusher he was in his peak. He can kind of take a step back because Bosa's there. He could kind of help out with the run game as well, but that's also what Sebastian Joseph Day was there. He was an outstanding run stuffer with the LA Rams for their Super Bowl winning team. So you have those pieces there. Underrated guy in the linebacking core that they got is Kyle Van Noy, who I think is going to have a good season. He played well for the Patriots. They have a linebacker as well, a pretty young linebacker, just still 23 years old, and Kenneth Murray Jr., who they're gonna hope that he could take that next step. He's out right now, so he's gonna miss the start of the season. But when he comes back, there's hope that he can make an impact here in his, I think it's year 2 for him. And like you said, adding J.C. Jackson to be the number 1 corner on this team, but you still have some pretty good, talented guys there, and Bryce Callahan, who's going to be very versatile in the defensive back crew, along with Asante Samuel Jr., who we all know is supremely talented. And safety-wise, they just re-upped him, Derwin James. I know, like, the thing with Derwin James has always been health, but last season he was healthy. 75 solo tackles, 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, pass deflections. Derwin James was good, and he only missed 2 games last season. So, and now Brandon Staley is in year 2 as a head coach. I think he's learned a lot from that year 1, because people forget he was a rookie coach last season. Like, man, and like I personally have the Chargers on top of this division, but it's not by a lot. I think they're only going to be up by like a game or 2 compared. So like if the Chiefs get 12 wins, I think the Chargers will have 13, or if the Chargers get 14, the Chiefs will have 13, something along those lines. Like I think the Chargers are only better than them by a game. So that's my big difference between. I think what the Chiefs lost and what they need to make up for will cost them compared to just the Chargers. I think the Chargers, you talk about having a 1-year window here. I think this is like I was kind of talking about that with the Bills before the AFC gets better. I think this could be that year. And like you mentioned, Chris, I think aside from the Chiefs, I think they are the best competition just from a pure talent perspective to go up against the Buffalo Bills in a playoff game. So I do have the Chargers above the Chiefs in this division and have them winning the AFC West.
So yeah, I mean, I get it. The Chiefs got worse this offseason with losing Tyreek Hill. I mean, a lot of people think the Chiefs got worse losing Tyreek Hill. I don't think they got that much worse, because they did add Scanling from the Packers. I know Juju, I'm not a big fan of him, but they added him. He's a really good slot receiver. They added Sky Moore in the draft. They drafted 2 defensive guys in the first round as well. Their defense was their biggest weakness this offseason. And then compared to that, you have the Chargers, who had this amazing offseason. Added J.C. Jackson. Like Jurg mentioned, they added Zion Johnson on the offensive line. They re-signed Mike Williams, who is extremely important. I know he's extremely inconsistent, but I think he's really important to the offense the Chargers run and the way Justin Herbert plays. They really need that big, deep threat kind of guy. So they needed to re-sign him, even if they did overpay. And then obviously trading for Khalil Mack was massive as well, because when you're in a division against Patrick Mahomes, you need to put as much pressure on him as possible. And having a pair of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa is insane. But you're not going to sit here and tell me that you're going to trust Justin Herbert, a guy who can't beat the Houston Texans and has to tie with the Las Vegas Raiders before they got Devontae Adams, and tell me that guy is going to win the division over Patrick Mahomes, who, although they really started off slow last year, but they picked it up when they needed to, and they almost went to the Super Bowl again before Patrick Mahomes melted down in the second half. They're destroying the Bengals in that AFC Championship. So there's absolutely no possible way I am picking Justin Herbert, a guy who couldn't beat the Houston Texans, the third worst team in the entire NFL last year, who were headed by Davis Mills and had one of the worst defenses in the entire league. And then when it came down to the last game of the season, all they had to do was win. And they couldn't beat the Las Vegas Raiders. Makes no sense. They tied. They needed a tie. All they needed was a tie or a win, and they couldn't even do that. He lost to that team when he had a chance to make the playoffs. So I don't care who they put on that defense or who they put around him. I'm in a wait and see mode with Justin Herbert. I get all the talent. I get all the potential. He's going to be a great quarterback in this league. Maybe it's not. I don't think it's going to be this year. It might be next year. I might be wrong, and it might be this year, but I don't, until I see it, I'm just not going to put faith in it. I'm not going to put my money on Justin Herbert leading this Chargers team to win in the division. I'm going to roll with the guy who's made 3 AFC championships in his first 4 to 5 years in the NFL and has already won a Super Bowl, and who's won the division each and every single year he's been a starting quarterback. So that's what I'm going to run with. I'm going to run with what's been happening the past few years and based off experience. But I kind of get the Chargers thing since they did have such a great offseason, but I just don't think the Chiefs got that much worse, and I just don't have enough faith in Justin Herbert based off the big games that he needed to win last year to make the playoffs.
I mean, like, with that Raiders game, the defense is what lost them the game. Justin Herbert had to tie that game in the fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one that forced the overtime. It was the coaching. It was the bad coaching mistake, which, again, you attributed to a rookie head coach, and the defense that was just unable to stop the run. And what did they do? They added 2 run stuffers, 2 guys that could help stuff the run in the offseason. So, like, I don't think it's fair to put that on Justin Herbert. And also, like, yes, it was a bad game against the Texans. Every quarterback has a bad game. Josh Allen got shut down by the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Hey, I let Josh Allen here too. He doesn't deserve any.
But I'm just saying, like, every quarterback has bad games. Like Aaron Rodgers, the last 2 seasons, he starts out like throwing 3 interceptions the first week, and at the end of the season, he wins the MVP award. Like,
my thing is, all these guys though made the playoffs. Like, they went far in the playoffs. A guy like Justin Herbert, him and the Chargers, they had a talented team. They had enough talent on that team to make the playoffs, and he just couldn't get it done in games that are easily winnable. Is my point. Like, I get if he had bad games and they made the playoffs. Like, I'm okay. Like, Josh Allen lost to the Jaguars. He had an awful game. He got outplayed by the Josh Allen that played defense. I get it. But they made the playoffs. They won that division. Like, same with Aaron Rodgers. He had bad games, but he had a bye, and he made the second round of the playoffs. Like, Justin Herbert didn't do that. He lost these games to these bad teams when he needed to win them, and they did not make the playoffs.
I think the issue is that, like, I don't know what the issue is.
I like Justin Herbert. I hope I'm proven wrong, but until I'm not, like, I'm just going to roll with the guy that's been getting it done compared to the guy who couldn't beat the Texans and the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to compare anyone to Patrick Mahomes, but I do think they're going to be better this year, you know. So I think the flaws that Jurg mentioned that held them back, they fixed them, and they fixed them with like some of the best players in that position. So I do think they won't be in that position of needing to tie games or needing to win games desperately because they made appropriate moves. Like, I think they're going to be favorites now, you know. You're right. I think part of the growing process is beating the Texans of the world. So that part I agree with you, but I do see Jurg's point where like Herbert had to get them out of situations where it was kind of it felt like a lose-lose scenario to a point where it was a winnable scenario, but they just couldn't get the job done. I see both perspectives. I just do think we're all consensus here. They need to make the playoffs. All right, let's forget about the conference, you know, contending against the Bills. Let them make the playoffs first, because I do think they need to get there. Not just us. Everyone's hyping up Herbert, and rightfully so. I think Herbert has superstar potential, and I think he's getting there. But he does need to make the playoffs now. Like, that's the biggest part. Like, even, and I'm not going to be, if they don't win, if they don't win the division, that's fine. But they still need to make the playoffs. Like, either if it's a wild card, like in that AFC West, I'm not going to like blame you for not being first in that division, but you do need to make the playoffs via wild card. Then it has to be. You have to be in the playoffs. That's the criteria now for quarterbacks that we have high standards for. I mean, we talked about it last week, Jurg. I think teams get so much better, the expectation goes higher because of like the moves that teams make. So expectations are high for Herbie. I think I think it's gonna be a season where there's gonna be pressure on Patrick Mahomes because we hold him to like a high standard and like in that echelon of like goatness to a
I
point where
don't
he
know. I don't know, Chris. I kind of have to disagree. I think like because people are trying to give the AFC West crown to other teams. I don't think it's as much pressure as right now as that. Now the media is going to make it pressure. Like if the Chiefs are 3-3 after the first 6 games, it's going to be like,
yeah.
is the Kansas City Chiefs running the AFC? And they're going to pretend like they've been doubting the Chiefs the entire time when they haven't really talked about them. They've just been talking about every single other AFC West team. So I'm not going to buy into that. I don't think the pressure is on Patrick. But if the Chiefs win the division this year, Patrick Mahomes could retire after this season, and he deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Well, here's the thing. I
Like,
think the
it's just
pressure
that
is
simple.
on him because like we hold him to like GOAT standards. So like he needs to like well also you have last year. You have to rebound off what happened last year. I think the pressure is always going to be on him regardless because we hold him to GOAT standards. I do think this year he's going to be the least pressure he has faced because of the expectations that like the Chiefs aren't going to be as good because there's no Tyreek Hill and everyone else got better. So that's where I view it. He has pressure because he's on a GOAT path and he has to win more. He has to win at least 2 more rings. But I don't think there's as much pressure for the Chiefs because of like what the AFC did this offseason. So I think honestly it's a big pro for them that they don't have to like that everyone else got better, so like the attention's on them. Whereas for them, not if people are writing them off, that's fine. I think they operate better
So
when
many
there's
people writing off. Yeah, I agree. There's so many people writing them off. I think they're gonna feed on this too. They're gonna have a lot less pressure on them, and they're gonna more
yeah.
wins. Yeah.
And again, we have the AFC conference final game against the Bengals. Like that has to be in the back of their mind, So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if there's one person I'm not gonna doubt, it's Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think
I'm
look,
probably gonna pick him for every game again this season.
yeah,
That was rough
like
last
they're
year.
just so good.
They lost so many games last year, and we're still picking them every single week.
yeah. I mean, there's probably gonna be a game like against maybe against like I'll have them splitting against the Chargers or something or the Bills.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that concludes our division series for football. Yeah, the concluding series finale. I use series finale because Better Call Saul just ended. Yeah, this is fun. This was really fun. Man, football's on the way. Football is almost here. It's about a month away, I believe. A little less than a month, actually. I know we're in the thick of preseason, but yeah, it's almost here. I'm excited. I know everyone's excited. It's football season, bro. No more heat waves outside. Weather's getting a little bit
Unfortunately,
cooler. Yeah, weather's getting a little bit cooler. The leaves might start falling soon, but that means football is on the horizon, which, can't be that bad. Man, Christmas is going to be stacked with sports games, by the way, for anyone that saw the list of
Oh my
football
God,
games and
yeah.
basketball games. I'm not talking to my family that day. No one talked to me. My eyes glued to the TV. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
Guys, you already know you can follow us at SomeWhatSports on Instagram to get the latest updates. I know it's been a little bit slow with the posts and all that stuff because it's summer, it's dead time, let's be real, it's baseball, we don't really got much to post. But we will be having stuff soon. I'm sure we're probably going to post our preseason predictions of the NFL, amongst other things, come, the start of the regular season in the NFL. Major League Baseball postseason is it's a month and a half away or so now. Like, things are going to heat up very soon here, so don't you worry about that, everyone. And of course, you're listening to this amazing podcast now. To continue to listen to this amazing podcast, you gotta, find us on YouTube, Somewhat Based in Sports. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like and comment on the videos. Let us know your thoughts. And of course, we're on Spotify now as well. If you're on the go, there's no better podcast to listen to and no better platform than to listen to it than on Spotify. Same thing, Somewhat Based in Sports. You'll see the beautiful red logo there. Of course, it's one of the greatest podcast logos in the game right now. And you listen to us on a weekly basis. Let us know: are we overhyping teams? Are we not giving teams enough credit? Are we being too harsh on teams? Actually, your comments may not affect that portion of it. But irregardless, you want to listen to the best sports podcast there is. The Somewhat Sports Summer 2022 might be coming to a close. But I gotta say, it's been an amazing ride, boys. The summer has been beautiful for us, and the fall and the winter are only going to be just as fruitful and marvelous.
Yes, sure. Beautifully said as always. Yeah, so Jurg and Dame, phenomenal job as always. Thank you very much to all of the listeners listening. If you made it this far, we appreciate you. And until next time, peace.